The galaxy was wide, silent, and ancient. Countless civilizations had risen and fallen in the endless sea of stars. Some races were builders, others explorers, and some only conquerors. Among them was the Korith Alliance, a coalition of peaceful species who valued learning, art, and quiet trade more than the engines of war. The Korith had lived in peace for centuries, protected only by treaties and faith in diplomacy. But that faith was broken the day the Vorga Dominion came. The Vorga were not builders. They were takers. Their fleet swept into Korith space without warning, burning colonies, enslaving populations, and leaving ashes where cities once stood. The Korith had no armies to match them, no weapons strong enough to resist. All they could do was flee and beg for help. So the Korith Council made a decision born of desperation. They would send an SOS into the void, broadcasting to every corner of the galaxy. Their message was simple. We are under attack. Our people are dying. If any will listen, if any have strength, we beg for aid. They did not expect an answer. The Korith had asked for help before. Nearby empires had given words of sympathy, but nothing more. Why risk their own fleets against the Vorga? Why bleed for strangers? To the Korith, it seemed the galaxy had already judged their fate. Extinction. Yet still the message went out, a fragile signal carried by relay stations and long-range pulses. It reached hundreds of stars, hundreds of governments, and among them, one world called Earth, the human response on Earth. The signal arrived inside a monitoring station on the far side of the moon. It was only one of thousands of transmissions that poured in daily, most of them background noise of the galaxy. But when the words were translated, a team of human officers fell silent. The message was raw, pleading, desperate. Commander Reyes, head of the monitoring post, forwarded it immediately to Earth's Unified Defense Council. Within hours, meetings were called across continents. By the next day, the human response was already forming. To the humans, this was not a distant tragedy. It was a call to action. Their history was filled with wars of survival, times when they too had faced extinction. They knew what it meant to be helpless against a stronger enemy, and they had sworn never to let such a fate fall on others, not if they had the power to prevent it. The humans did not debate whether to send help. They debated only how much help to send. The Korith's low expectations. On the planet EpicSciFiTales, the Korith Council gathered in their great chamber. Holograms flickered overhead, showing maps of spreading Vorga advances. One world had already fallen completely silent. Others were under siege. We must be realistic, said Counselor Vera, her silver skin glinting under the lights. No one will come. The great powers have ignored us. Smaller states fear the Vorga too much. We are alone. A murmur of sorrow passed through the chamber. But then Counselor Talon, a younger member, stood and lifted a data pad. There is one reply. The chamber stilled. One? Asked another counselor bitterly. Which empire? The Lura, the Orcs? Will they send a cargo of bandages, perhaps? Or a single frigate to observe our suffering? Talon shook his head slowly. Neither. The reply is from humans, from Earth. The chamber filled with confused whispers. Humans, a young species, barely a century in space, known for being energetic, unpredictable, and stubborn, but not counted among the great powers. Most Korith had never even seen one in person. They say they are sending aid, Talon continued carefully. Medical supplies, food, and fleets. The chamber grew silent again. Fleets? Counselor Vera repeated, her voice sharp with disbelief. What fleets could humans possibly send? A dozen frigates? A handful of cruisers? Enough to save one colony, perhaps? Talon hesitated, glancing at the message again. They did not specify numbers, only that they are mobilizing. Laughter, bitter and hopeless, spread through the council. To the Korith, this was little more than naive bravado. Humanity had no standing in galactic wars. They were too new, too untested. If this is all we can expect, one counselor sighed, then we are truly doomed. But far above EpicSciFiTales in the cold reaches of space, humanity was already moving. Earth's Decision Admiral Kepler stood on the command deck of the UHS Resolute, one of Earth's newest battleships. Around him, the vastness of the human warfleet stretched like a sea of steel and fire. Carriers, cruisers, destroyers, supply ships, and escorts, all assembled with breathtaking speed. Kepler's voice carried across the command channels. The Korith called for help. The Vorga think them weak, undefended. They are wrong. Humanity will not sit silent while innocents are slaughtered. We do not send half measures. We do not patch wounds and retreat. We break the knife that seeks to kill. Cheers erupted from crews across hundreds of ships. Within days, Earth had mobilized more vessels than the Korith could have imagined. The fleet numbered in the hundreds, with soldiers in the tens of thousands. Their weapons were modern, their doctrine clear: overwhelm, dominate, and end the threat. The journey begins. The fleet surged into warp space, tearing open the void with thunder. To the Korith, who expected only token support, the sight would have been unthinkable. But they did not see it yet. Instead, the Korith continued their desperate defense, unaware that a storm was already on its way. In the warp tunnels, Admiral Kepler studied the reports of Vorga tactics: brutal, predictable, effective against weak resistance. Against humanity's strategies, however, they would face something entirely different. Beside him, Captain Ilara Morgan smiled grimly. The Korith asked for support. They'll soon learn what that means to us, Kepler nodded. When humans answer a call, we don't arrive with whispers. We arrive with thunder. Meanwhile, the Vorga's arrogance on a Vorga command ship orbiting a burning Korith colony, Overlord Koresh stood watching the flames below. His race lived for conquest. To him, the Korith were only resources to be consumed. When one of his lieutenants reported that the Korith had sent messages begging for aid, Koresh only laughed. Let them beg. No one will come. And if some weak neighbor dares to send a few ships, we will crush them too. His laughter echoed through the chamber, cruel and confident. Yet even as he laughed, the human fleet raced toward him, silent, determined, unstoppable. The Korith's last hope back on DEATHWORLD. Counselor Talon sat alone in the communications chamber, staring at the human message again. The words were simple, almost blunt compared to the careful diplomacy of other species. We received your SOS, we are coming. Prepare to receive fleet support. Hold as long as you can. You are not alone. Talon whispered the words aloud, as if afraid they would vanish if not spoken. Not alone. For the first time in many days, he felt a flicker of hope. Closing of Part 1, the galaxy had judged the Korith as doomed. The Vorga laughed at their weakness. Even the Korith themselves expected only scraps of help, but humanity had heard their cry. And when humans chose to answer, they did not bring whispers of comfort. They brought fire. The Korith Alliance waited with growing fear. Days passed since their desperate call for help, and every sunrise felt heavier than the last. On the colony worlds, people hid in bunkers, staring at the skies where Vorga warships prowled like predators. The counselors on DEATHWORLD debated endlessly, but their voices carried little strength against the advancing tide of destruction. They had little hope. They expected that if help did arrive, it would come in the smallest of forms, perhaps a single convoy of medical supplies, or a few old ships to escort refugees. Nothing more. So when their sensors first detected human ships entering orbit, the Korith prepared themselves for disappointment. Arrival of the humans on the great capital city's observation deck. Counselor Talon stood with several others as the skies shimmered. Points of light appeared against the blackness of space. At first, the Korith thought it must be a trick of the atmosphere. Then the points grew larger. The first human vessel came through like a mountain of steel and fire, sliding into orbit above the planet. Its hull gleamed with polished armor, and strange markings in human script lined its sides. More ships followed, one after another, each larger than the last. The Korith delegation gasped. What is this?" whispered Counselor Vera. She had expected a handful of small transports. Instead, dozens of massive warships hung above DEATHWORLD, casting shadows across the oceans below. Counselor Talon's voice shook as he spoke. "They said they were sending fleets. I thought it was only words. It was not words. It was reality. The humans had not come quietly. They had come prepared." First meeting. The council chamber filled with tension as the human delegation arrived. They were escorted into the grand hall by Korith aides, their heavy boots echoing against the marble floors. The humans wore uniforms of deep blue and black, their shoulders marked with golden insignias. Admiral Kepler led them, tall and calm, his eyes sharp as he studied the alien architecture around him. At his side was Captain Ilara Morgan, who carried herself with confidence, her gaze scanning every detail of the hall. The Korith counselors rose politely, though their unease was obvious. Humans were strange to them. Their faces carried expressions so direct, so unguarded, compared to the carefully measured tones of Korath diplomacy. Counselor Vera spoke first. "Representatives of Earth, we thank you for answering our call. We did not expect such a response." Admiral Kepler inclined his head slightly. "When a cry for help is heard, Earth does not hesitate. Your message was clear. Your people are under attack, so we are here." Counselor Talon leaned forward. "We expected supplies, maybe medical staff. But this—" He gestured toward the sky where the human fleet glimmered like a sea of stars. "This is more than we imagined." Captain Morgan's lips curved into a small smile. "You asked for support. To humans, that means more than bandages and words. It means we fight beside you." Alien doubts, the Korath counselors whispered among themselves. Their culture valued balance and diplomacy, not overwhelming power. The sheer size of the human fleet unsettled them. Counselor Vera voiced what many were thinking. "Admiral Kepler, with respect, the Vorga Dominion is vast. Their fleets outnumber anything we have seen. Even with your forces, how do you plan to resist them? Do you not fear their retaliation?" Kepler's voice was steady, calm, but it carried the weight of certainty. "Fear is not the question. Preparation is. We studied the Vorga's methods before leaving Earth. They rely on intimidation and brute force. They crush those who resist because no one dares to hit back with equal strength." He leaned forward, his gaze hard. "We do not fight to resist. We fight to end their threat." The council chamber fell silent. The idea was shocking. "And the threat?" Such thinking was alien to the Korath. They had imagined survival, not victory. Counselor Talon finally asked, "And if you fail?" Morgan answered simply, "Then we die fighting. But we will not fail." The Korath shivered at the certainty in her voice. The human mindset later. In private discussions, the Korath asked the humans more about their history. They wanted to understand why this species, so young in galactic terms, would dare to challenge an empire like the Vorga. Captain Morgan explained in plain words. "Humanity grew on a world that tried to kill us every day. Storms, predators, diseases, wars, we survived them all. We learned one thing. If someone tries to take everything from you, you don't negotiate. You fight until you win," Admiral Kepler added. "And when others cry for help, we don't send half measures. We send enough to end the danger. That's our way." The Korath delegation listened in awe. They had seen many species in the galaxy, but none who spoke with such simple, dangerous certainty. Vorga interception. While the humans met with the Korath, the first challenge arrived. A group of Vorga scout ships entered the system expecting easy prey. They detected human vessels in orbit and moved closer, curious but unafraid. The Korath Council watched nervously from their command center. They expected a cautious exchange, perhaps warnings and retreats. Instead, the humans acted instantly. From the UHS Resolute, a swarm of missiles launched in perfect formation, streaking across space with deadly precision. The Vorga scouts barely had time to raise shields before they were torn apart in bursts of fire. It was over in less than 2 minutes. Counselor Vera stared at the display in disbelief. "They didn't even hesitate." Captain Morgan, standing in the command center, replied calmly, "Hesitation gets people killed. We strike first so you live." For the Korath, this was a revelation. The humans did not wait to defend. They destroyed threats before they could grow. Shifting perceptions. As the news spread through Korath cities, ordinary citizens watched recordings of the human ships destroying Vorga scouts. For the first time, cheers rose in the streets. Hope spread like fire, yet with that hope came unease. The humans were not saviors of gentle words. They were warriors. Their style was direct, their actions decisive. To some Korath, it was frightening. Counselor Talon admitted his own mixed feelings. "They are here to save us, but they fight like nothing I have ever seen." "They are not restrained." Counselor Vera shook her head slowly. "Perhaps restraint is a luxury we can no longer afford." Plans for war that evening. The humans invited the Korath counselors aboard the Resolute. They were shown the command deck, where holographic maps of Vorga movements glowed brightly. The human officers explained their strategy, striking supply lines, overwhelming fleets, liberating besieged colonies. The Korath listened in astonishment. They had never seen plans drawn with such confidence, as if the outcome was already assured. Admiral Kepler turned to them. "We are not here to hold the line. We are here to push the Vorga back. You asked for support. We bring you freedom." The words struck the council like a thunderclap. For the first time, the Korath began to believe that survival was not their only choice. Victory was possible. Closing of Part 2, the Korath had expected small aid. A handful of ships, maybe supplies for the wounded. Instead, they had found themselves standing beside a force unlike any they had known. Humans had arrived not as helpers but as warriors ready to change the war itself. Above GalacticPrime, the human fleet burned bright in orbit, a promise of thunder yet to come. The galaxy would soon learn what the Korath had just discovered. When humans answer a call, they do not come with whispers, they come with shock and awe. The human fleet left GalacticPrime like a storm breaking free from its calm. Hundreds of ships, large and small, ignited their engines and surged into the black sea of stars. Their trails of blue fire stretched across the void as they formed into squadrons, each moving with a discipline that amazed the watching Korath. From the surface of GalacticPrime, countless citizens stood on rooftops and open fields staring upward. To them, the sky glittered with more warships than they had seen in their entire history. They whispered prayers, some in awe, some in fear, for in their hearts they wondered, could these humans truly turn back the Vorga, or were they only throwing themselves into the same fire? Counselor Talon watched from the planetary command center. He remembered how hopeless he had felt only days ago, when the SOS was sent with little expectation. Now, as he looked at the human fleet climbing into the heavens, he felt something he had almost forgotten: hope. Human confidence. On the command deck of the UHS Resolute, Admiral Kepler stood at the center, hands clasped behind his back. Around him, officers moved with quiet precision, plotting warp routes and updating tactical maps. The ship hummed with energy, a beast waiting to strike. Captain Alara Morgan joined him, her expression calm but sharp. "The fleet is ready, Admiral. Squadrons are in position. Support ships are holding behind the carriers. Engineers report all systems green." Kepler nodded slowly. "Good. The Vorga have grown used to striking the weak. They will not expect us." Morgan allowed a small smile. "They'll learn soon enough." Behind them, the massive holographic display showed the path of the fleet. Red markers represented Vorga activity: blockades, patrols, sieges. The humans had studied these for weeks before departure. Every weak point, every habit of the Vorga was noted. The plan was not to fight endlessly. The plan was to strike fast, hard, and without mercy. Korath observers, a group of Korath representatives, had been invited aboard the Resolute to observe. Counselor Talon walked carefully onto the bridge, his silver skin shimmering faintly under the glow of the displays. He had seen war rooms before, but none like this. One of the human officers explained the layout with simple words, showing how the fleet moved in coordinated groups. The precision astonished Talon. In the Korath fleet, what little of it existed, ships acted more independently, often slow to respond. The humans, however, moved like a single organism. "Do you always prepare for war this way?" Talon asked quietly. Captain Morgan turned toward him. "On Earth, our history is full of wars. Some we did not choose, but we fought them anyway. We learned that hesitation costs lives. That's why our fleets move as one. We strike before the enemy even understands what is happening." Talon tilted his head. "But isn't that dangerous? To act so boldly?" Morgan's eyes hardened. "More dangerous to wait and watch your people die." Talon fell silent. He had no answer. Into warp the order was given, and the fleet leapt into warp space. The stars stretched into bright lines, then folded into tunnels of swirling light. The ships glided through the strange dimension with steady purpose. On board, crews trained constantly. Soldiers drilled in the hangars. Pilots checked their starfighters, and engineers ran system tests again and again. There was no idle moment. The Korath observers were startled by the intensity. On their worlds, war was something far away, something others waged. Here, war was life itself. Humanity had built its fleets not only for defense but for survival. Counselor Vera, who had once doubted the humans deeply, admitted softly to Talon, "They are different." "They live with war as we live with peace," Talon nodded. "Perhaps that is why they came when no one else would." First clash, the fleet dropped out of warp at their first target, a Vorga patrol station guarding a major supply lane. The Vorga had fortified the system with defense platforms and a garrison of warships. They expected resistance only from stragglers, not from a full human armada. The moment human ships appeared, the Vorga commander sneered. "New prey," he growled. "Crush them quickly." But before the Vorga could form ranks, the humans struck. From the Resolute, waves of missiles launched, each guided with pinpoint accuracy. Electronic warfare systems screamed through the void, jamming Vorga communications. Fighters poured out of human carriers, their engines streaking blue fire. The Vorga tried to respond, but confusion spread instantly. Their signals were cut, their platforms blinded. Human ships advanced with perfect coordination, firing in salvos that tore through enemy shields. Within 15 minutes, the patrol station was in ruins, its ships burning. From the observation deck of the Resolute, Counselor Talon could only stare. "It was so fast," he whispered. Captain Morgan answered, her voice even. "That is how we fight. No drawn-out battles, no wasted time. We strike until the enemy has no chance to recover." The Korath exchanged uneasy glances. To them, war had always been slow, cautious. What they had just witnessed was not war as they knew it. It was shock and awe. Lessons in human warfare. After the victory, human officers reviewed the battle. The Korath delegation was invited to listen. They expected self-congratulation, but instead found harsh critique. "We were 20 seconds late on the left flank response," one commander noted. "Our missile saturation could have been tighter," another added. Admiral Kepler summarized with a firm tone. "Good but not perfect. We fight a ruthless enemy. We cannot afford mistakes." The Korath were stunned. The humans had won a flawless victory, yet they still searched for errors. This explained why they were so dangerous. They demanded perfection even when triumph was already theirs. Counselor Vera whispered to Talon, "No wonder they are feared. They do not accept anything less than complete success." Message to the galaxy news of the battle spread quickly. The Korath networks broadcast footage of human ships destroying the Vorga patrol. For the first time in living memory, the Vorga had not crushed their enemy. They had been crushed. Across the galaxy, other races noticed. Whispers spread in diplomatic channels. The humans have moved. The DEATHWORLDers are not passive after all. They fight with fury. The Vorga, furious at the loss, sent warnings to nearby systems. Any who side with the humans will be destroyed. But to the Korath, the effect was the opposite. Colonies that had been ready to surrender now resisted, inspired by the sight of human firepower. Hope began to spread wider than fear. The human creed. On the long journey to the next target, Counselor Talon spent time with human soldiers. He wanted to understand them beyond their ships and weapons. In the barracks, he sat among armored Marines, listening to their conversations. They spoke of families waiting at home, of comrades lost in past battles, and of the duty that bound them together. One young Marine noticed Talon's curious gaze and said simply, "We fight because someone has to. If not us, then who?" Those words echoed in Talon's mind. For the Korath, war was something to be avoided at all costs. For humans, it was something to be endured so others would not have to. Toward the besieged colony. The next destination was a Korath colony under direct siege. Reports showed the Vorga tightening their grip, preparing to break the defenses within days. Admiral Kepler gathered his officers. "We hit them fast. We break the siege before they realize we're here. The colony must see not just survival, but victory. The fleet prepared, weapons armed, engines primed. For the humans, this was not merely about saving a world. It was about sending a message to both friend and foe. When humanity answered a call, they did not come halfway." Closing of Part 3A's, the fleet surged once more into warp. The Korath delegation looked on in silence. They had asked for support. What they had received was a force that shook the stars. The Vorga had no idea what was coming. The humans were marching toward them, carrying not mercy, but certainty. And with every step of the war fleet, the galaxy's balance shifted. For the first time in centuries, the predators would learn what it meant to be hunted. The Korath colony of Solora Prime had been under siege for nearly 2 weeks. Its skies were filled with the dark shapes of Vorga warships, circling like vultures. The colony's cities lay silent, streets empty as millions of Korath hid underground in bunkers. Supplies were running out. Hope was gone. Every day the Vorga bombardments shook the earth. Towers fell, fires burned, and the defenders, few ships and small planetary shields, struggled only to delay the inevitable. The Korath citizens believed no one would come, but far beyond their sight a storm was already approaching. Human arrival. The void shimmered, and the human fleet emerged from warp. Ship after ship appeared in perfect formation, engines glowing bright against the darkness. Carriers, cruisers, destroyers, and battleships, an entire armada, larger than anything the Vorga had faced at this colony. On the bridge of the UHS Resolute, Admiral Kepler stood tall, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. Red markers showed dozens of Vorga ships blockading SciFi-Prime. Behind them, the colony's surface glowed with damage reports. Enemy numbers confirmed, an officer reported. 54 capital ships, 20 defense platforms, and ground occupation units. Colony shield at 12%. It won't last another day. Captain Alara Morgan glanced at Kepler. Then we end it today. Kepler's voice was steady. All ships prepare for combat. We break the siege. No survivors in orbit. First strike. The Vorga noticed the intruders quickly. Their commander snarled in contempt. Another prey species dares to interrupt? Destroy them. But before the Vorga could form their battle lines, the humans attacked. From the Resolute, a wave of missiles launched, hundreds at once, streaking across space like falling stars. Human carriers released entire swarms of starfighters, engines burning blue as they cut through the void. Electronic warfare systems screamed to life, blinding enemy sensors and disrupting their commands. The Vorga's formation collapsed almost instantly. Their ships, built for intimidation and raw power, were not prepared for such a sudden storm. Explosions lit the darkness as missile after missile tore through shields. Human railguns fired kinetic slugs at near light speed, piercing armor like paper. In the first 10 minutes, a dozen Vorga ships were reduced to flaming wrecks. Korath reactions from deep beneath SciFi-Prime's surface. Huddled Korath citizens stared at emergency displays. At first they thought the lights in the sky were new Vorga bombardments. But then one by one red enemy markers vanished from their screens. They're retreating? One Korath engineer gasped. No, another whispered as cheers began to rise around him. Someone's fighting them. Someone's winning. In the planetary command bunker, Governor Leria, who had been preparing for surrender, stood frozen as a human voice came through the comms. SciFi-Prime, this is the United Human Fleet. Hold your positions. We are breaking the siege. You are not alone. Tears welled in her eyes. For the first time in weeks, her people had hope. Total domination. The battle raged above. Human ships moved with machine-like precision, squadrons covering each other, carriers launching new waves of fighters as destroyers cut enemy ships apart. The Vorga tried to counterattack, sending their heavy cruisers forward in a desperate push, but the humans met them head-on. Enemy flagship identified, an officer reported. Bring it down, Kepler ordered calmly. The Resolute and its sister battleships focused fire. Massive energy beams cut through the void, striking the Vorga flagship's shields until they flared and collapsed. Missiles followed, slamming into the weakened hull. A final railgun salvo pierced the ship's core, tearing it apart in a fireball that lit the system. The destruction of the flagship broke the Vorga's will. Their remaining ships scattered, trying to flee. But the humans gave no escape. Pursuit groups hunted them down, cutting through retreating vessels with ruthless efficiency. Within an hour, the blockade was gone. The sky above SciFi-Prime was clear. Ground liberation. The humans did not stop at orbital victory. Dropships roared from carriers descending toward the planet's surface. Inside, human marines sat ready, their armor gleaming, their weapons primed. Counselor Talon, watching from the Resolute, could hardly believe it. You are landing troops already? Captain Morgan nodded. We didn't come just to scare them away. We came to free your people. The dropships cut through the clouds, engines screaming. They landed outside occupied cities, deploying armored vehicles and infantry. Human soldiers moved with speed and discipline, overwhelming Vorga garrisons that had been terrorizing civilians. On SciFi-Prime, Korath citizens hiding in bunkers heard the sounds of battle above. Hours later, the doors opened and human marines stood at the entrance, offering food, water, and safety. For the Korath, it was like watching legends walk among them. Shock and awe Governor Leria was brought to the surface once the main cities were secure. She stood in the ruins of her capital, looking up at the human warship still glowing in the sky. Around her, her people cheered as human Marines marched through the streets, driving away the last of the Vorga. Admiral Kepler appeared via hologram, his face calm. "Governor, SciFi is free. The Vorga will not return." Laria bowed deeply, overwhelmed. "We thought we were abandoned. We thought no one would come." Kepler's reply was simple. "You called for support." We answered. For the Karith, this was not just support. It was salvation delivered with thunder. The galaxy reacts. The liberation of SciFi shook the galaxy. Reports spread across communication networks. Entire Vorga fleets had been destroyed in a single battle. A colony once doomed had been freed. Other civilizations watched with disbelief. Many had ignored the Korith's cries, assuming resistance was hopeless. Now they saw humanity's answer: overwhelming power and unwavering resolve. Some races whispered in admiration, others in fear. The humans had revealed themselves not as a young species still learning its place, but as a force capable of shifting galactic balance. The Vorga Dominion, humiliated, swore vengeance. But beneath their rage there was fear. They had met a new enemy, one who fought not with hesitation but with shock and awe. Korith transformation. In the weeks following the liberation, Korith citizens began to rebuild. They worked side by side with human engineers, repairing shields, restoring power, and clearing ruins. Everywhere stories spread of human bravery: the soldiers who freed bunkers, the pilots who flew through fire, the medics who treated alien wounds as if they were their own people. Counselor Talon walked through one of the rebuilt districts, children running past him waving small flags with both Korith and human symbols. He felt a strange warmth in his chest. "They are not what I expected," he admitted quietly. "Not just warriors, protectors." Counselor Vera, once skeptical, stood beside him. "And destroyers," she added. But perhaps that is what was needed. Closing of Part 4 above SciFi, the human fleet remained in orbit, shining like guardians in the night. The colony had been saved, the Vorga scattered, and the Korith had seen a side of humanity no one had imagined. They had asked for help, expecting supplies and comfort instead. The humans had delivered war itself, swift, unstoppable, overwhelming. The galaxy would never forget the sight of SciFi's skies burning with human firepower. The age of human shock and awe had begun. The Vorga had retreated, their fleet scattered and battered, but the humans did not celebrate. For Admiral Kepler, victory was a momentary pause, not an excuse for complacency. He knew the galaxy had changed in ways that would ripple far beyond SciFi. From orbit, the Korith watched in awe as human ships formed patrol patterns around the colony. The fleet would remain until full security was guaranteed, until no enemy could threaten again. For the Korith, this was both comfort and revelation. Humanity did not help halfway. Rebuilding and relearning on SciFi, reconstruction began immediately. Humans and Korith worked side by side. Advanced Earth engineering crews helped repair shield generators and communications arrays. Heavy machinery cleared streets, and portable power units lit neighborhoods that had been dark for weeks. Korith engineers, initially skeptical of human methods, quickly discovered the efficiency of their approach. Humans moved in precise teams, each member knowing exactly what to do. Where the Korith had debated endlessly over minor decisions, humans acted decisively and effectively. Counselor Talon walked among them, observing the differences. "They are not only strong," he said quietly to Vera, "but they teach without forcing. They show the way forward, and you want to follow?" Vera nodded, still surveying the rebuilding efforts. "It is strange. We expected rescuers. We got teachers and warriors together. Diplomacy in a new light. While the Korith focused on rebuilding, the humans sent messages to other nearby civilizations. They made clear their presence was not limited to SciFi. Any attack on allies or innocents would meet the same response. Some nearby races had previously ignored the Korith call for help, thinking it too dangerous to intervene. Now they reconsidered. Humans were no longer just a young species testing the stars. They were a force capable of altering the balance of power. Counselor Talon received one of these messages, transmitted directly from Admiral Kepler. "The galaxy is vast and danger is everywhere. We cannot guard all worlds forever, but those who ask for help will not be ignored. Humanity protects those in need. We do not negotiate with cruelty. We end it." For Talon, the words were both comforting and intimidating. Humanity did not merely defend. They acted with certainty, with overwhelming force, and with a clarity of purpose that no Korath had experienced. Lessons for the Korath human presence remained on SciFi for weeks after the battle. During that time, they shared knowledge, combat strategies, engineering techniques, and even basic survival practices. One afternoon, Talon observed a human squad conducting drills with local Korath defense forces. The humans emphasized teamwork, timing, and rapid response. "Don't wait for the enemy to make mistakes," one human instructor said. "Make the first move count." The Korath officers were astonished. In their traditional strategy, patience and caution were valued above all, but the humans demonstrated that speed, precision, and decisiveness could save lives in ways caution never could. Talon realized that their civilization had been sheltered by diplomacy for centuries. It had kept them safe, but it had also limited their understanding of real survival. Humanity had opened their eyes. Vorga reassessment news of SciFi's liberation traveled faster than any fleet could. Across the Vorga Dominion, commanders whispered nervously. A species once thought insignificant had destroyed their ships, lifted a besieged colony, and remained undefeated. Overlord Koresh, furious and humiliated, convened his council. "Humans," he growled. "They are dangerous. Not in numbers, but in method. They fight without fear. They strike without hesitation. They protect those they call allies. We cannot ignore them." Yet even Koresh's fear was tempered by a grudging respect. In every previous engagement, his enemies had either surrendered quickly or been crushed. Humans had challenged that pattern. The galaxy was beginning to see a new reality. Earth's children were not ordinary. Building trust back on SciFi, humans worked with the Korath not just as soldiers but as teachers and advisors. Civilians watched and learned. They saw how humans repaired systems, distributed supplies efficiently, and organized defense units. One evening, Talon walked along a quiet street now illuminated by temporary lights installed by human engineers. Children ran past him, laughing as humans tossed small toys to them. Korath adults repaired buildings side by side with human soldiers. "They are different," Talon said aloud to no one in particular. "Not just warriors. They think like we do, but faster. And when we hesitate, they act." A nearby human officer overheard and smiled. "That's how we survive," he said simply. "We act always." Talon nodded. He understood. Humanity had not only freed SciFi, they had reshaped how the Korath would see the galaxy. Sending a message after the battle, the humans sent a simple, clear signal across the sector. "We are here. We answer calls for help. Any attack on allies will meet our response. The galaxy has been warned. It was not arrogance, it was fact." The humans did not bluff. They had shown their capabilities at SciFi and were prepared to repeat them if necessary. Nearby races received the message with a mix of awe and fear. Those who had underestimated humans now reconsidered. Those who had dismissed young Earthlings as insignificant were proven wrong. The Korath realized the galaxy would never see them, or any ally, in the same way again. Humanity's reputation was spreading, fast and unyielding. The Korath Reflection Counselor Talon addressed the Korath Assembly after the liberation of SciFi. His voice carried both awe and newfound confidence. "Friends, our people were saved not by chance nor by diplomacy alone, but by action. Humanity has shown us what it means to answer a call with strength, speed, and purpose. We must remember this lesson. Our future will demand courage, decisiveness, and the willingness to act, not only in war but in protecting our values." Counselor Vera stood beside him. "And we must understand that strength is not cruelty. Humanity has proven that power used for protection is different. We have learned that even the smallest act of courage, multiplied by the right force, can change the fate of worlds." The assembly listened, thoughtful and inspired. A new era had begun, not only for the Korath but for the galaxy's perception of humans. Departure and promise. After several weeks, the human fleet prepared to depart. Their mission was complete. The colony was safe, the Vorga scattered, and the Korath strengthened. Before leaving, Admiral Kepler addressed the Korath Council. "We do not stay unless asked. We do not fight unless necessary. But remember this, when you call for help, we will answer. And when we answer, it will not be quiet. It will be decisive. It will be overwhelming. and you will survive. Talon felt a strange mixture of pride and awe. Humans had arrived when all hope seemed lost. They had changed the outcome, and in doing so, had altered the galaxy's understanding of what a young species could achieve. The humans departed, their ships disappearing into warp space as suddenly as they had arrived. But their impact remained, etched into the hearts of the Korath and across countless communications channels. Legacy of shock and awe. Prime's skies cleared for the first time in weeks. Children ran in the streets, laughter replacing fear. Soldiers trained, ready to defend in new ways. Engineers rebuilt with efficiency and hope. And citizens looked upward, knowing that they had survived because someone answered when the galaxy seemed silent. The Korath realized humanity was more than allies. They were a standard, a force to be reckoned with, a symbol of unyielding protection and relentless resolve. News of Prime's liberation spread to other civilizations, along with the story of human decisiveness, strategy, and courage. The legend of Earth's children, warriors who answered cries for help with fire and thunder, grew quickly. For the Vorga, it was a warning. For the galaxy, it was a revelation, and for the Korath, it was a gift they would never forget. Closing the humans had come as a response to a simple plea for support. They had delivered not just help but victory. They had transformed fear into hope, despair into determination. In a galaxy filled with countless stars, countless civilizations, and countless dangers, humanity had announced itself. The Korath and all who would hear their story understood clearly. When humans answer a call, they do not hold back. They bring shock and awe, and the galaxy will never be the same.